Hi, I'm Arnie Skelton, and each week in this podcast series I'm going to offer you my top 10 tips on particular topics or themes that might be of interest to you as a teacher or manager or both. Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast, which is part 2 of negotiation skills. Last week I took you through my top 10 tips on negotiation in general. This week it's about how to resist 10 typical negotiation tactics often used by the other party and often a bit manipulative. In fact, in my view, these negotiation tactics that are quite common are nothing more than pressure selling. So they are masquerading as negotiation when in fact really they're a sheep in wolf's clothing by being pressure selling. So here's 10 typical negotiation tactics that you should resist. So tactic number 1 is setting unhelpful deadlines or time pressure. It's quite a common technique to tell you that if you don't close the deal today, then the price will go up, or somebody else will come along and take this because they've got a booking on it for tomorrow. So effectively they're simply using time as a variable and trying to squeeze you into an agreement by making the deadline, more imminent. So quite simply say, well, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. Resist. Tip number 2, or technique number 2, is giving you a limited option. Well, you can have it at this price, but if you have it in green, and you don't want it in green, I mean, if you do, that's fine. They're offering that as a discount almost. But if you want something in a different colour or a preferred colour that isn't green, then again, say no. Or, if you're prepared to take it as green, use that acceptance of a colour you don't particularly want as a lever to try and get a reduced variable of theirs. So, okay, I'll take green, but I'd need to have a 15% discount for taking green. Or I would need, if it's a car for instance, I'd need, some particular accessory added. So if they're trying to sell something to you because it suits them, it's green, to get rid of it, then ask for a compensatory reduction in another of their variables, price or an accessory, as a way of trading. So, technique number 2 is them offering you a limited option. Technique number 3 is they're offering you a threat. There will be a price increase unless. Somebody else will take this away unless. It won't be available unless. Well, all of that really, as it sounds, is a threat. It's kind of, if you don't do it now, then there will be a consequence that is not to your favour. Again, just resist. Say, well, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. People who are offering threats or very limited deadlines aren't really negotiating. They're not looking for a win-win. They're looking to pressure sell. So, best response to pressure selling? Resist. So, technique number 3 is to imply a change in condition which sounds like and is a threat. Technique number 4, and this is a very common one, called reciprocity. It's used by the other party to give you something that seems like a gift or a favour or something that's generous, in the hope that it places you under a psychological obligation to offer something back in kind. So, without you asking for something, they offer something, a seemingly generous gesture. I tell you what, I'll throw in this and I'll throw in that, or I'll provide something additional. I'll give you a free tank of fuel, or I'll make sure that there's a CD player, or whatever. It's an offer apparently of a gift because it comes as no additional price. It's not part of a changing contract. So it's a freebie. And we all like freebies. We like getting something for nothing. But psychologically, for some of us, we feel we have to reciprocate by offering something back in turn. If nothing else, it might simply make us more favourably disposed to that other party. If you're going around a number of garages and looking at a range of cars, maybe you are more inclined to return to the one that offered you the freebie. Actually, the freebie's not really that crucial compared to the overall cost of what it is you want, but it has created a psychological indebtedness in you, where you feel you have to offer something back in return. And the best response to reciprocity is to resist it. That's their choice to offer you something for nothing. It shows that they really are keen on you closing a deal with them. Do not feel obligated to respond in a similar fashion. If they're offering it as a gift and you eventually seal the deal, then just take it as a gift. You don't have to offer anything back in return. And remember that it's a bit duplicitous. It's a bit of a manipulative gesture to try and create a psychological preference in your mind. So, as with all the other techniques in this list, resist. Discount in your head the emotional appeal of a gift. Tip or technique number 5. Resist the sizzle and pay attention to the steak. Some people will dress up the offer by making particular features particularly attractive. The best example of this is something we all know, which is house selling. People say, don't they, make sure you have fresh coffee or fresh bread coming out of the kitchen as a smell, or nice fresh flowers. My younger son was buying a house or looking at a house, and I was with him as he was taken around the house by its seller. And she said, come in and we'll start by going upstairs, which I thought was a little bit unusual. And we won't go to the main bedroom, we'll go into the second bedroom. And I, at that point, realised that something was going on. And as they went into the second bedroom, they were able to see below them a fantastic garden, just as a sort of overview of just how good the garden was. That's the sizzle. The house is the steak. But the seller was selling the sizzle. And of course it worked. The garden was fantastic. They had 2 young children, and it was a wonderful garden for the children to play in. And for the rest of the visit around the house, they kept talking about the garden. And the house was good. It was great. And they bought it, and I think it was a really good buy. But once they had seen the garden from the upstairs second bedroom, they were hooked. So beware a single factor which has really powerful emotional appeal. That's a single variable, isn't it? The garden. And they have been hooked by being sold the sizzle more than the steak. So, tip number 5, resist the sizzle. Tip number 6, a well-known negotiation technique is Salami Negotiation. This is that in a negotiation there'll be a number of variables. There'll be a composition of variables, let's say possibly 10. And you've got 2 basic choices in negotiation as strategies. The first one is you can put all 10 variables on the table, and that allows you to cross-trade one variable with another. Or you can go for salami negotiation, where you look at each variable on its own and come to a decision. In effect, salami negotiation is haggling over each variable. And for some, haggling over each variable works towards a better outcome for that party. My own personal view is that usually putting all the variables on the table and then cross-trading across those variables works best. It gives you maximum flexibility and maximum choice, and you see the whole picture the whole of the time. So I'm quite sceptical if the other party introduces, let's just look at this variable, let's just look at transport, let's just look at insurance, let's just look at removal of rubbish. No, let's put them all on the table, because putting them all on the table allows the essence of a good negotiation, which is cross-trading. So resist salami strategy. Tactic number 7, the halo effect. This is really another way of describing the sizzle and the steak. The halo effect is where the other party emphasizes a variable they know you are particularly keen on. In the example I gave earlier, the halo effect is the garden. The vendor of that house realized that a young couple might be very interested in a safe and large garden, and she was right. So she emphasized the halo effect of the garden. She knew it would have a compelling influence. So what might a halo effect be? Well, what variables in the deal might matter to you? The other party may know deadline is crucial. The other party might know that price or cost is crucial. The other party might know that a method of payment is crucial. So they will emphasize that and perhaps be resistant to seeing it as a variable, knowing it's so important to you. So beware the halo effect, where one variable almost swamps the rest. So technique number 7 is the halo effect. And like all the others, resist. Technique number 8 is vagueness. Be careful. If you want to strike a deal, and clearly by having the negotiation in the first place, your desire is to have a successful outcome, be careful that the other party doesn't just agree something in vague terms. Oh yes, we'll manage that. Yes, we'll arrange for that. Yes, we'll cover that off. Yes, we'll make that happen. How? And who's going to pay? And when will that happen? Seek the specifics. Don't be seduced by a vague offer or a vague agreement. Get to the detail. So on tip number 8, make sure the detail of each arrangement and variable is clear. Technique number 9 is false assumptions or premises. And this is more about you than the other party, though both of you can be a victim to this. You assume something because that's what you've always assumed, or that would be in your head standard practice. But unless you've nailed it, unless you've clarified it, it may not be standard practice to the other person. I have a funny story about this. A friend of mine who does double glazing went and did some double glazing for an oldish lady, and he was doing double glazing for the whole of the bungalow. So it was quite a long job. He was there for several days, and she often made a cup of tea and a plate of biscuits and did some sandwiches around lunchtime, and of course they used the in-house toilet. When he came to settle and pass the bill on to the lady, she put a counter bill to him for refreshments and for use of toilet amenities. He thought the offer of biscuits and tea and toilet facilities was a freebie. That was his assumption. That was his standard practice. Actually, no. He learned a very valuable lesson through that contract, and it's a very good example of not taking everything for granted. Because you might offer something for free, don't assume the other party will. Another good example of that is if you've had some, landscaping or gardening done, who's going to remove the rubbish? You might assume they will. Maybe not. Maybe the pile of rubbish is left on your garden or drive because you didn't specify that as something to be done by the other party. They will then, of course, remove it, but for an additional cost. So beware false assumptions. That's tip number 9. Make sure everything in the contract is specified. Don't assume anything. And my final issue or technique or tactic that is often used by the other party is known as a straw issue. And this is quite a strong and powerful technique, quite manipulative and quite difficult to spot. A straw issue is something that the other party puts into the negotiation as a variable which is unimportant to them, but they want to use to extract a concession from you. So they may have 10 variables offered on the table, of which 3 are what we'd call straw variables or straw issues. They're quite happy to let those go, to give them up, in order to extract a meaningful variable from you, one that you would quite like to hang on to. So it's difficult to say what might be a straw issue because that's only known to the other party. But it can be, that they will offer to collect something. They would offer to collect something anyway, but they're putting it onto the table as a straw issue so they can say, I tell you what, we won't charge you for collecting it, we'll just come and take it anyway. And you'll think, well, that's generous. That's something I can give from my side, I can give something in return for that. Now, they were going to give it anyway. So it's difficult because if it feels real and relevant for you, then understandably you're likely to cross-trade and offer something in return. I think my attitude to this is because straw issues are so difficult to detect from the other party, you have to just be very kind to yourself. If they are offering something that later turns out to be a straw issue, that they were going to concede or give up anyway, but it is valuable to you, then in a sense it's not really a straw issue, is it? Because you would have been prepared to pay for that. So even though they think they have got a result by getting from you a concession for that straw issue, you are probably going to be prepared to pay for it anyway. By contrast, one way of thinking whether or not an issue is a straw issue from the other party is to consider what other parties that you work with would do. If another party with whom you have a similar contract gives that variable away for free, and this particular party is offering to trade it, the chances are it might be a straw issue, because you know elsewhere people give you that for free. So watch out for straw issue is my tip number 10. So to quickly run through them again, here are my top 10 tactics often used by other parties. Tactic 1, unhelpful deadlines. Tactic 2, offering limited options. Tactic 3, offering a threat, an unwanted consequence. Tactic 4 is creating an obligation through reciprocity. Tactic number 5 is emphasizing the sizzle, the emotional appeal, and not the facts and the detail of the stake. Tactic number 6 is seeing each variable as worth negotiating on its own, the salami strategy, slice by slice. Tactic number 7 is creating a halo effect, particularly something they know you value. Tactic number 8 is keeping things vague, not specifying the detail. Tactic number 9 is using false assumptions. That's particularly true for you, for assuming something to be included when it isn't. And tactic number 10 is the other party offering straw issues that they meant to concede anyway, but in order to extract a concession from you. So in most of those, when they come from the other party, simply resist. Okay, that's it for this week. I hope you found that helpful. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe. You will still get the podcast for free, but you will also get an alert to let you know when the next podcast is available. And please recommend the podcast to anyone else you think might like it and benefit from it. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review and any other comment, because they'll help promote the podcast series on the relevant platform. So, bye for now.